Welcome to part 4 of the Lost Disney Rides Iceberg. If for some reason you found this video before parts 3, 2, and 1, go ahead and go watch those videos first, and then I will see you back here. I know it's been around 7 months since my last upload for this series, but it is returning, and in the coming weeks, so will the Disturbing Media and the Chart of Truth series. Before we get into layer 5, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, Brilliant. If you're in any type of schooling right now and want to get more serious about learning, whether you are in middle school, high school, or even college, Brilliant offers a ton of courses all within a wide range of expertise. For example, they offer Math Foundations, which is your basic pre-algebra and geometry, spiking in difficulty all the way up to statistics and even calculus. Right now I've been busy doing their logic and search engine courses. I honestly got so engrossed with the material that I forgot I was even doing the sponsorship in the first place. The visuals along with the on-screen activities make it a surefire way for you to easily process the information while also making the learning experience way more enjoyable than your traditional classroom setting. If you aren't quite sure if they have the right course for you, here is the entire course list that they have available. I highly recommend taking Brilliant's courses if you're like me and find yourself dozing off in any type of classroom setting. Make sure to use the link below or go to brilliant.org/YourEverydayTheorist. The first 200 people to use the link below will get an additional 20% off any annual subscription to Brilliant. If you want to get serious about your education or just need to catch up in school, try one of their annual plans today. And thank you to Brilliant for sponsoring today's video. With that said, let's jump into the first item on layer 4. The World According to Goofy. The World According to Goofy was a parade at Disneyland that ran for a year and a half in 1992. The neat thing about this parade was it tried to show the history of the world if everything was goofified. Don't really know if that's a word, but it is now. With everything goofified, you would get monstrosities like this goofy golf ball or these 90s dad jokes like this painting of Marco Polo. The parade would start off with Ludwig von Drake leading the first float that is made up of these big history books with these dancers opening their textbooks to reveal the name Goofy. Each float after this takes the audience into different time periods in the world. First, of course, is the pre-hysterical age. This part featured dinosaurs accompanied by these cocktail waitress looking dancers, very Flintstones-esque. Oddly enough, the lore in this part is nothing short of hilarious. Through the floats, you are basically told that at some point or another, Goofy or some other person opened up these tar pits as spas, which eventually led to the extinction of the dinosaurs, which leads us to the next age, the Egyptian days. Keep in mind, you'd be able to tell the name of the era that you're watching because a huge book titled whatever the era would be would lead the next part of the parade in. So for example, in this area, you would see this big textbook that says the Egyptian days. Leading the Egyptian part of the parade was this very weird, goofy-faced golf ball with a snake on its head. The reason for the golf ball Goofy is because of Goofy's vision of ancient Egypt. Goofy's vision of ancient Egypt takes the form of a golfing tournament. Why a golfing tournament? I have no idea, but he's Goofy, he can do whatever he wants. Only other thing worth mentioning is that the song that plays during this part is oddly similar to Aladdin's Friend Like Me song, which wouldn't be released into theaters until November of 1992. On to the second to last time period. Here we are in the Renaissance, which is Goofy's take on the Renaissance. This is focused around the rise of food with Goofy's construction of the Leaning Tower of Pizza. We also get this masterpiece of a painting of Marco Polo and his discovery of fried chicken. The final part of the parade is Goofy running for president. That's literally all that happens during this part. It's just Goofy with his friends, Donald, Pluto, Chip, and Dale, all riding in Goofy's Pace Bus. The parade then ends with this huge inflatable Uncle Sam Goofy float that has Goofy running a marathon trying to get to the finish line. Side note before we move on, this parade was changed following the 1992 elections to instead feature Goofy becoming Man of the Year instead of him running for president. What a fun and weird parade, and definitely something that I wish I could have gotten to experience. If it wasn't stated already, this one was actually found in the Disneyland park as opposed to the California Adventure Park. Golden Dreams. Golden Dreams refers to a film that played in Disneyland's California Adventure from its opening date in 2001 all the way to its closing date in 2008. If you know where the Little Mermaid ride is now, that's the building that this film was shown in. The main difference between the building then and now was the inside of the building at that time held a massive theater instead of the under the sea ride that is there now. Walking inside the theater, you'd see these weird statues modeled after Whoopi Goldberg hanging off the side of the walls. Once the show started, a light would bring these statues to life and they'd start giving you information about the film that you were about to watch. Now, the main purpose of this film was to tell the story of California's history, starting with the gold rush and troubles that Chinese laborers endured while working on the railroad, then moving to immigration issues, the Great Depression, and then even showing more modern events that took place, such as the invention of the Apple II that Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs created and marketed. Throughout the film, Whoopi Goldberg is seen giving many of the characters motivation at their lowest points, such as this part where these men throw junk at this foreign woman just because of her ethnicity. Then Goldberg gives her a reassuring look and tells her to be strong. Most of the film showcases these rather hard to stomach moments in California's history, and I really appreciate that they didn't hold back with some of the depictions. One of the more devastating parts of this film is the scene which depicts what working on the railroads was like for the Chinese laborers. While every other group is able to effortlessly light their fuses on fire and get lifted up, one group takes way too long to light their match and they seemingly just blow up along with the mountainside. Kinda wild for Disney to show this, especially since it's at Disneyland and not on TV, but I do appreciate the fact that they didn't shy away from telling it how it was. Obviously, it's all a dramatization of real events that took place, but it still gets the point across that some of these moments in history weren't all rainbows and sunshine. The film lasted around 22 minutes long, including the introduction while sitting in the theater. If you want to see the entire thing yourself, I will leave a link below to a YouTube video of someone that was able to record the entire film before it closed. Electronica. I've been dying to talk about this entry because it's one of the few on the list that I personally got to experience. Electronica is a nighttime dance party event that took place in Hollywoodland in Disney's California Adventure. To build hype for the upcoming release of the Tron Legacy movie, Electronica debuted 2 months before Tron Legacy on October 8th of 2010. This was a huge dance/nightclub that would take over the streets of Hollywoodland once 8 p.m. would hit. Once 8 o'clock hit, the portal would open and you'd feel like you walked straight into the world of Tron Legacy. There were dancers with glowing hula hoops, martial artists doing flips in the air with replica identity discs, and just all sorts of futuristic tech and scenery. The best part of it, at least in my opinion, was what awaited at the end of the entire lot. Flynn's Arcade. Taken directly from the movie, there was an old flickering Flynn's Arcade sign, and man, this arcade was taken straight from the 80s. You had all the classics, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, Centipede, and many others that people love and adore. And of course, they had the original Tron machine. Nonetheless, this arcade, along with the awesome spectacles that awaited outside, would leave a lasting impression on anyone. I don't know if it's just my 11-year-old brain or nostalgia talking, but I really genuinely love this event. I remember always begging my mom to stay longer just so I could experience Electronica and spend some time in the arcade. Also, just one last thing I want to mention before we move on. The sickest part of the arcade was that they gave you these really cool Flynn's Arcade tokens that really looked like they were from the movie. Putting $1 in the token machine, you would leave with 4 great souvenirs. I kept mine for almost 11 years now, and just pulling it out and looking at it, it really just takes me back to the day that I got it. Like many things in this world, the days of Electronica and the Flynn's Arcade were numbered, as both closed permanently on April 15th of 2012. Disney's Aladdin, a musical spectacular. The Disney veterans should all know about this experience. Disney's Aladdin, a musical spectacular, was one of the longest running shows at Disneyland, with its original opening debut on January of 2003 and staying for nearly 13 years to January of 2016. This show had a special charm to it that I don't think I can really express through words, but those who have experienced it know exactly what I'm talking about. From the hilarious modern jokes that the genie would make, to the heart-dropping apple throw scene, there were many moments of the show that, although many of us knew were coming, still kept me entertained. I'm pretty sure I watched this show every single time that I went to the Disney parks, right up until the day that it closed. The show was a live-action depiction of Disney's Aladdin that was honestly just a shot-for-shot remake of the original Disney movie, with the major change of cutting Abu from the cast. I imagine Abu was cut because it may have been way too difficult to train a monkey or use a puppet to play that character. Oddly enough, Iago was still in the show, always being manned by a puppet master that would speak for him as well. Now, I'm not going to summarize the entire show because it's literally just the Aladdin film reimagined into a Broadway musical, so instead I will talk about the notable parts that I always found entertaining, starting with how you actually got inside to watch the show. Almost like a movie theater, the show times will be posted outside of the Hyperion Theater, and as you made your way through the initial entrance, you would make a choice if you wanted to be seated on the floor level, the second level, or the top level. What was neat about this show was that no matter where you sat in the theater, there was always something for you to interact with. If you got the floor seat, you would be up close and personal with the actors during the Prince Ali song. And later in the show, when A Whole New World was playing, if you were on the second or top floor, you would be able to get up close and personal with the actors that would literally fly through the sky on a magic carpet. Little touches like this is what made this show as charming as it could be, but nothing in the show was nowhere near as charming as the actors that played the genie. The actors and actresses would change depending on the time of day, but I swear man, every single genie I watched always freaking killed it. Props to Disney for hiring some quick and witty actors because the genie would almost always steal the show, cracking jokes and frequently breaking the fourth wall throughout the musical. The genie just made the audience feel way more involved than any other theater show I've personally been to. Also, a major plus to this attraction was the ability to just sit down for 45 minutes in an air-conditioned room. This attraction saved me many times throughout my many Disney park adventures when all I wanted to do was rest my feet, relax, and depending on the time of day, even allowed me to take a quick nap that would help me power through the rest of my day at Disneyland. Truly a fun show that was almost replaced a bit earlier than expected. There was supposed to be a Toy Story musical that was going to replace the show in 2010, but for some unknown reason, it was cancelled and later shown on some Disney's cruise ships instead. And so, the Aladdin musical would live on until 2016 when it was officially announced that the Aladdin show would be replaced for a live-action depiction of Frozen. This was a personal favorite of mine that I wish would make a return because there's just something about the new Frozen show that isn't nearly as charming as this show was. The Mad Tea Party. The Mad Tea Party was basically the same exact thing as the Electronica Nighttime Spectacular, except it was modeled after Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. Some notable changes from Electronica to the Mad Tea Party is the time. Electronica would start at 8 p.m. while the Mad Tea Party started 2 hours earlier at 6 p.m. This was mainly because the Tron theme heavily relied on it being nighttime to hit as hard, while the Mad Tea Party's visuals could be enjoyed with a little bit of sunlight. As expected, the visuals of this nighttime event were still quite enjoyable. I mean, it is Alice in Wonderland after all. Very colorful, almost psychedelic-like animations, really pretty lights, and other obscure set pieces were what made the Mad Tea Party such a cool event to experience. Also, while Electronica was more like a nightclub DJ experience, the Mad Tea Party was more like a big concert. The Mad Tea Party band would play on stage, performing covers of music by contemporary artists like Bruno Mars, Maroon 5, The Beatles, and many others. These would be performed under the House of Cards stage that was way more stunning to watch after nighttime hit. Alongside the concert was the cocktail club nearby, and just like Electronica, there was the Mad Arcade, housing the same exact games as the Flint's Arcade, but with a beautifully done Alice in Wonderland theme. The original run of the Mad Tea Party was from June 15th, 2012 to November 30th, 2014. I will admit, I didn't enjoy this iteration nearly as much as the Electronica event, but it's still one of those one-of-a-time experiences that many Disney fans begged to come back. And I must have been in the minority here because the Mad Tea Party was actually brought back for Disneyland's 60th anniversary in May 22nd of 2015. And it ran for a whole year until it was finally scrapped for good on March 30th of 2016. A spiritual successor to the Mad Tea Party was the Avengers Training Initiative, which was just a mere stage show that didn't last too long. I really wish Disney would bring something like this back to Hollywoodland during the night times, because at night, Hollywoodland seems a bit lifeless as of late. There are some really cool things going on during the day with Avengers Land and such, but around nighttime, that entire side of the park just seems a bit dead. At least that's my experience going to the parks. Halyx. Halyx was a rock band that would play in Disneyland's Tomorrowland. Their initial opening date was on June 20th of 1981 and should be seen as an experimental attempt on Disney's part to create a new type of entertainment at the Disneyland Resort. To form a group like this and have it perform in the 1980s was quite ambitious, as every other type of entertainment at the park was quite tame. The main reason this was even created was because of the recent success of the Star Wars franchise, so Disney executives got to work on how to capitalize off of that success. Now, unlike some of the other types of concerts that were done, this band was really a band. After many auditions for the crew, they settled on Laura Mumford for lead vocals, Roger Freeland for bass, keyboardist Tom Miller, percussionist Tony Capalla, guitarist Bruce Gowdy, drummer Brian Lucas, and backup vocals Jeanette Klinger and Karen Tobin. Sorry if I butchered any of those names, but the band only performed for one season in 1981, from June 20th to September 11th. What set this group apart from all the other bands that also performed at Disneyland was that Halyx got to perform on the Space Mountain stage, which no other band had gotten to do at that time. Unfortunately, the only footage I've been able to find comes from the documentary that Defunct posted on their channel. However, their music from their performances can be found easily on YouTube, so I will leave a link to both. As for the performance itself, it was a mix of human and non-human costumed people. Some of the notable parts of the performance were when Tom Miller would come onto stage, as he would roll up on this futuristic vehicle while absolutely killing his part. Another eye-catcher of the performance was the drum riser, which would literally rise up the drums above the stage while somebody was playing them. The drummer of the band has stated multiple times that it was very nerve-wracking during this part because the platform would actually jiggle with every single movement that he made, making the job way harder to do, especially on stage in front of thousands of people. Those were the main things that stood out to me, but there are so many other parts to this performance that made it quite the spectacle to be seen. Honestly, one of the strangest and greatest attractions that Disney has ever thrown together. I highly recommend watching the documentary below for the entire picture, as it goes super in depth on not only how the band was made, but how exactly the performances were done. Motorboat Cruise. The Motorboat Cruise opened in 1957 on the border of Fantasyland and Tomorrowland. This ride should be seen as Autotopia, but if you were driving boats instead of cars. They used an underwater railing system similar to that of Pirates of the Caribbean. They left the rails spaced very far apart, so it gave the illusion that the guest was actually steering the boat. This is very similar to how the Autopia track is done, with that skinny beam allowing you to steer the car without feeling like you have training wheels on. The only problem with this ride though was that guests did not know that there was a predetermined route. Some guests genuinely thought that they were steering the boat, so a common issue that would occur on this ride is two boats getting stuck against each other on the track. Imagine this is the railing and there are these two boats. Let's say the driver in boat A is just a terrible driver. They would most likely be pressing up against the railing, and the railing would slowly but surely guide them to the end of the course. Now the driver in boat B sees how slow boat A is going. So they decide, okay, I'm just gonna drive around them. The reason the driver in boat B thinks he can make this turn and actually drive around boat A is because from his point of view, there technically is enough clearance if the boats were actually being steered by them. You see, here is the clearance that the drivers were seeing, but underneath the water where the actual railings were, here's the actual clearance for both boats. So when driver B tries to overtake driver A, he rubs up against the railing, causing his boat to mush in between the railings with the other boat. This would happen so much that cast members had to be trained on how to get the boats unstuck. Now, what really sucked for cast members during this time was that if the boats got stuck somewhere that wasn't close to land, they were expected to actually dive in the water just to get the boats unstuck. I am exaggerating a bit because the river wasn't that deep. The deepest it would get was up to some employees' upper chest, but you could easily walk around in the water. But still, they'd have to get their clothes wet and whatever else they had on would just get drenched, just to get the boats unstuck so the ride could operate. As for the ride itself, it wasn't anything too special. You just cruise around the river that lied between Tomorrowland and Fantasyland. There was some scenery put in place, but nothing too fancy from the footage I was able to find. Due to the ever-growing demand for more action-packed rides like Star Tours and Space Mountain, the ride would officially close in 1993 and was never replaced by anything. In fact, the queue for the ride can still be accessed today. If you walk past the Matterhorn, there is this small area that used to be the entrance for this ride. Nowadays, the loading area is filled with patio seating and is a quiet gem that not many park guests even know about. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you guys enjoyed part 4 to this iceberg, please let me know in the comments below. I know it's been around 7 months since the last one that I posted, and I am going to get a video out soon that's going to explain basically everything I've been doing the last few months, because even though I haven't been doing YouTube, I've been pursuing a lot of other avenues in my life that just felt like they were unfinished, and I'm sure you guys will understand once that video comes out and you guys will, all the air will be cleared up basically. As for the meantime, expect a lot more uploads. I recently just got someone to help me edit the Chart of Truth series, so that series is going to be back and up and running. Hopefully we can get that down to at least like once a month, if not more than that. And with all that said, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.